Just a minute, so if everyone wants to turn on their cameras and take a seat, that would be awesome. Okay, it is 9 o'clock. Moderator, David, can we make sure, do we have everybody here that needs to be in?
We have everybody I'm expecting.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, I see everyone over here. So, well, let's get started. Welcome to the board meeting of the Structural Pest Control Board. This meeting is being held on June 29th, 2023, and the time is now 9 a.m. We will now establish a quorum. Sophia, can you please do a roll call?
Yes. President Finley.
Here.
Vice President Anderson. Here. Board Member Dr. Bindal. I'm sorry, Board Member Dr. Bindal, is he on?
We do not have Bindal.
Okay, Board Member Paxson.
Here.
Board Member Thrasher.
Here.
And Board Member Tingen.
Here.
We have a quorum with 5 present. I think that President Finley his audio, something happened.
You guys there? Hello?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I don't know how it got disconnected. It made me call back in. So sorry about that. We took a roll call vote? That's where it dropped off.
Oh yeah, we have a quorum.
Okay. With a quorum established, we will now move to the next agenda item. Agenda item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance. If you guys could join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Much better, Kyle.
So agenda item 11, going off of the yesterday's script as well. So public comments not for items not on the agenda. So I want to ask the public if they have any comments on items that are not on the agenda. So if we could open that up, please.
This is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. Dial-in users may need to dial *3 to raise their hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. You will be given 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning. And our first request for comment comes from Peggy Bayerly. Hold on just a moment, Peggy. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning, everyone. Is my audio okay?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. This is Peggy Byerly from the Department of Pesticide Regulation Enforcement Branch Headquarters. My DPR update today is regarding our 2023 structural regulatory training in Northern California for the new County Agricultural Commissioner staff who currently are or will soon be performing structural pest control inspections and investigations. This county staff training is mandated for the Structural Pest Control Board agency and DPR to develop and give together to the counties by Business and Professions Code Section 8616. We surveyed the counties this month and received nominations to attend from 40, meaning 40, county ag offices, and they nominated more staff statewide who wish to attend than we can normally accommodate. Now that more people are traveling and meeting in person again, it's been more difficult this year finding a demo site venue with a hotel close enough that meet both our contract and training needs. We've narrowed it down to a few sites in the Bay Area. Depending upon which site we secure, our joint training to the counties will be offered either in late September, first week of October, or perhaps the first week of November this year. We always appreciate industry volunteers for our demo site training aspects, and this will conclude my DPR update unless there are any questions.
Thank you
Any
very much.
questions? Yeah, none heard, so thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And that was our only request for comment at the moment. Do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes. So we could close the comments. So thank you so much for that, Peggy, and keeping us updated on what's going on there. Let's see, agenda item number 12, review and possible approval of the minutes. So agenda item 12, discuss and possible approval of the March 9th, 2023 Structural Pest Control Board meetings. Can I ask the board for a motion?
I'll motion to approve.
And that was
Yesenia.
Yesenia, okay. And for a second?
I'll second it.
That's John. Thank you so much. Public, do you guys have any comments on this motion?
This is the moderator. We are open for public comment on the motion for the meeting minutes. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Better yet, tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen and raise your hand. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise their hand. And we're going to take just a couple of seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. So it has been moved and seconded to approve the March 9th, 2023 board meeting minutes. Sophia, can you take a roll call vote?
Yes. President Finley,
Yes.
Vice President Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Paxson,
Yes.
Board Member Thrasher, I'm sorry, Board Member Thrasher, is she on?
Yes.
Board Member Tingen.
Yes.
And we have
Okay,
motion carried.
Motion carried. Thank you. So the next agenda item was agenda item 13. We are going to push that out for about an hour. Sophia, I know you had an update, so we're just going to skip over 13. Sophia, were they going to present, I think?
Yes, we have the Office of Professional Examination Services that is presenting during this agenda item. And unfortunately, they had another meeting that they needed to attend this morning. So they're going to get on around 10:30. So as soon as they're on, we can go back to this agenda item.
Okay, perfect. So we will, if everyone's okay with that, we're going to skip over item 13 and we're going into agenda item 14, discussion and possible action on the use of the NPMA 33 form in California. And I'll turn that over to you, Sophia.
Thank you, Kyle. So the NPMA is the National Pest Management Association Wood Destroying Insect Inspection Form. And during the March 9th meeting, there was public comment that was received, and they had concerns regarding the use of the NPMA 33 form in California. They explained that the form is used during real estate transactions to identify wood destroying insects and does not require the identification of other wood destroying organisms, such as dry rot. They emphasized that there's a danger and that it may cause home buyers a danger, and how it primarily benefits lenders because the inspection could result in a report with no findings, even if there is considerable dry rot or other WDO damage. So the board directed staff to look into this and report back, add this to the agenda today and report back on what we have found. So for states without procedures in place for pest inspections, there's HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, requires the WDI inspection form, the NPMA 33 form for any HUD or Veterans Affairs guaranteed property transactions. However, they have suggested guidelines out for completing WDI inspection report for completing that inspection. And it states that if there are regulations in place in any particular state that requires the use of a state-approved form and excludes the use of all other forms, the state-mandated form must be used. So in our case, we do have our state-mandated form mandated by 85 Business and Professions Code Section 8516, and that's our Form 43M41, which is the Wood Destroying Pests and Organisms Inspection Report. So back in 2005, the board did issue a notice to all branch 3 companies and pretty much stated that the law requires the use of the WDO form in California and does not authorize the NPMA 33 form. So my recommendation would be, if the board wanted to take some sort of action on this agenda item, that we consider echoing the guidance that was issued in 2005, which is also attached in your materials. And that just pretty much specifies that California's law requires the use of wood destroying pests and organisms inspection report and does not authorize the NPMA 33 by any branch 3 licensee. Are there any questions or?
I have a question, Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
What happens sometimes is we'll have a VA buyer on a WDO inspection, and the lender is not in California, and we issue our standard California WDO report, but they still want, in addition to that, their NPMA 33. And I think what they do is they probably just dismiss the California report and, when it comes to their administrative work. And my question to the board, or my question is, can we tell anybody that asks for that it's been determined by our California Structural Pest Control Board that we are not supposed to issue that kind of a report? I mean, is that what you're telling us, to deny or decline?
I think that if a lender's requiring the NPMA 33 form, I don't see issues with having, if it's for California, for having both forms completed. So if they're going to do the NPMA 33, they have to, in addition to that form, complete the WDO form.
My concern is when it comes to the buyer beware, they maybe aren't seeing the California WDO report. They're only seeing what the lender wants to provide. I mean, I know we can't control everything,
Right.
but we're saying not to do it, and then we're also saying go ahead and do it. So that's where I think branch 3 companies have a question.
Who are the
Nice if
reports
we were
issued
told,
to?
don't do it. So
Who were the reports issued to?
whoever ordered it. So like if a buyer's agent or a seller's agent, or maybe just a homeowner, a seller. But in the NPMA 33 situation, it's typically the buyer's agent. You know, the report is being requested for a VA buyer most of the time.
So it doesn't go directly to the lender, it goes to the buyer's agent, who presumably would share it with the buyer, wouldn't they?
Presumably.
Unless they want the deal to go through and
That's all
there's
I care about.
$18,000 worth of dry rot that might end the deal.
And it certainly doesn't go to the California Structural Pest Control Board, the NPMA 33. I don't know where it goes.
So what we've been doing, and kind of to your point, Sophia, is if somebody calls in and just says, oh, all we need is the NPMA 33 form, we just say, hey, we can't just do that. We have to do a wood destroying organism California report. We'll also fill out this form and send it to you guys for lending purposes. Otherwise, but yeah, so if somebody calls in for the NPMA, we do that and just force that they have to do the WDO report with us. Otherwise, we don't have like an answer to, I don't think we can go the route of saying, no, we're not going to do this NPMA form
Right.
when it's a federal thing that everyone else is requiring.
I can add something. In my research on this, we did find that NPMA has an addendum for WDO that is attached to the NPMA 33 in the case that a pest control operator does find dry rot, those types of things. So while in California, we have our WDO form in our inspection report, NPMA, if it's required by the lender, also has an addendum that they could attach if they're requiring an NPMA form.
How would we get a copy of that or understand more about this addendum?
I can distribute it out. Maybe put a link, if there's a chat, I can probably put a link to the website that they have it on.
So are you saying that
there is a chat.
they are asking for, in different states, that people are you seeing it being used, this addendum, where in different states they're identifying the insects and then also attaching this addendum where they found dry rot? Are we seeing that happen?
I can't speak to what's happening in the industry.
Yeah.
I'm just not familiar with that. But through my research, I did find that there is an addendum. So if a lender is requiring NPMA 33 form, the California's alternative to just saying no is have our pest control operators complete the addendum as well.
Okay, I like that idea.
I think part of my concern is not that we can't figure out how to do both, meaning the WDO report and the NPA 33. It's just as far as consumer protection, there could be no termites in the house, but the whole bathroom could have subfloor damage and fungus damage up the walls, under the vanity, under the bathroom shower, and that wouldn't be included on the NPMA 33. I mean, it could be thousands of dollars. The deck could be bad. So many things that go. I mean, obviously, if it goes on this addendum, but just concerned that it doesn't get back to the consumer sometimes. They just want to close. So.
I mean, I would say that's for lending purposes. So I just don't see, I mean, just like if a buyer were to order a home inspection report, I mean, we're hoping that the findings go to the buyer, to the consumer eventually. So we hardly ever get, and Janet, you're probably in the same boat, like the lender's not calling us directly and ordering the inspection report, right? It's like, it's always the agent or the buyer, and the agent's going to be held liable if they withhold the California WDO report from their buyer and only show them the thing. I mean, obviously that's maybe a training that we can be out doing in the industry with the realtors, of knowing that the liability they put on themselves if they don't disclose the WDO report and only send the lender that. You know, most of the agents we work with, I know, are gonna disclose what is the reports that are issued, and we'll just make sure that the WDO California report is issued.
So I guess the word to California branch 3 companies is you can never do the NPMA 33 only. You can issue it, but it has to be in conjunction with the WDO report. Is that right, Sophia?
I think that would, that's what I would recommend doing.
And Sophia, can I ask a clarifying question? Is this necessarily like a change in procedures, or is this more just us as a board clarifying to the industry what is available to them, what would be the recommended path forward? Is it more on that end?
It is more of a clarifying, yes.
Okay. And is there a suggestion of how we would communicate that?
Well, we could send out, as they did, years ago, send out a notice to branch 3 registered companies. We could also, utilize our newsletter, social media, email blasts to get, information on this out to our licensees.
My question is this something, to Yesenia's point, are we making a motion? Are we voting on something? Or is this just a discussion? Again, if we are making a motion and voting on something, what are we making a motion voting on?
You can make a motion to direct me to issue, similar guidance that was issued in 2005 that California's law requires the use of wood destroying pests and organisms inspection report, does not authorize the use of, or maybe we can, rather than does not authorize, but be more clear on when the NPNA 33 form is used, it needs to be in conjunction with the WDO form.
Yeah, something along the lines where California is saying that you cannot just send out the NPMA 33 form. That it's got to, you can, but it's got to be in conjunction with our state provided WDO report. So
yes.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I mean, let's continue to see if there's any more comments from the board on this discussion. Mark, you got anything? No. Okay.
The one question I had, the guidance in 2005, which was 18 years ago, says their form doesn't include all of the information that California law requires. Have we reviewed today's form to confirm that that still applies? That they haven't somehow updated it or changed it to track with ours or with California requirements?
I believe that we have, it still does not comply with California requirements.
Okay, thank you.
It's a 1-page report that not a lot of information is included. It's more like just checking boxes.
Checking some boxes. And I noticed in the Business and Professions Code section requires there to be various things attached to our form, I think. So if all you're doing is checking boxes, yeah, you're not providing everything California law requires. So I support the motion.
Okay, so let's make a motion then on this, and then we can second it.
Kyle, you've made a motion. This is Sabina.
Okay.
So
We made the motion. So I need a second on the motion then.
I'll second.
Was that you, Mark? Perfect. Let's open up to the public to see if they have any comments on this motion, please.
We are accepting public comment on the motion for agenda item 14. If you would like to make a comment, raise that hand by tapping the hand button at the bottom of your screen. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise their hand. We're going to take just a couple of seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. So it has been moved and seconded. Sophia, if you could take a roll call vote.
Yes. President Finley,
Yes.
Vice President Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Bindal. He still is not on, right?
You know, I thought I saw him on the list of attendees. Let me look again.
He has joined us.
Okay. Dr. Bindal?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And your vote's yes?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Paxson?
Yes.
Board Member Thrasher?
Yes.
Board Member Tingen?
Yes.
6-0 vote, the motion carried.
Motion carried. Thank you all for the insight on that. And thank you. I forget who the member of the public was, the gentleman at the March 9th in-person meeting that brought that to our attention. So thank you. Do you remember who that was?
Yeah, his name is Todd. See, I want to see if he's on here. I thought I saw him on here. Todd B.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then that's what we really appreciated, public comments on that, because that was a thing where something that wasn't on our agenda item, he brought it up and we discussed it, and here we are, doing something with it. So thank you again to the public on that. Moving on to agenda item 15, review, discussion, and possible action on legislation related to the board, the structural pest control profession, and or the DCA. And I'll turn that over to Heather Jackson to present.
Good morning. Just pulling up my notes here. In your materials, there is a legislative summary which lists all the bills we're tracking. These either affect the board, have an impact on the pest control industry, or have department-wide impact that would affect our board or its operations. The bills specific to the Structural Pest Control Board are Senate Bill 813 and Assembly Bill 307. SB 813 is our sunset bill. This would extend the operations of the board to January 1st, 2028. The bill is now with the Assembly Business and Professions Committee, scheduled for a hearing on July 11th. AB 307 would extend the structural fumigation enforcement program to January 1st, 2029. This bill was ordered to the consent calendar on Tuesday, the 27th. It is on its second day today. Bills impacting the pest control industry, primarily DPR, Department of Pesticide Regulation, are Assembly Bills 363, 652, and 1322. AB 363 would require DPR to issue a determination with respect to a reevaluation of, you're gonna have to give me some grace on this one.
Neonicotinoids.
Yes, that one. Pesticides when used on outdoor ornamental plants, trees, and turf, and to adopt control measures for uses that are necessary to protect pollinating insects, aquatic ecosystems, and human health. AB 652 would establish an environmental justice advisory committee with DPR to integrate environmental justice considerations into DPR programs, policies, decision-making, and activities. Both AB 363 and 652 are set for hearing with the Senate Environmental Quality Committee, on July 5th. AB 1322 would ban the use of diphacinone in wildlife habitat areas and prohibit its use in California until DPR has completed their reevaluation and developed and adopted further restrictions with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. It would also make changes to existing restrictions on the use of second-generation anticoagulant rodenticides to match those placed on diphacinone. This bill passed out of the Senate Environmental Quality Committee with amendments yesterday after a 4-2 vote and has been re-referred to the Committee on National Resources and Water. We have received a letter from the Pest Control Operators of California requesting the board to consider taking a position on this bill. It is included as attachment 3 under agenda item 15. I believe it's page 84. And with that, I've concluded my legislative report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I had a question on, we kind of discussed it a little bit yesterday, but on the SB 544, the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, do we know where that's leaning towards and when that would go into effect?
I believe it is going through the process. I will have to check on.
This is Sabina. I can tell you it's moving through the process, and a lot of boards have taken support positions. So if it goes through the regular process, it'll take effect in January. If they find somewhere else to put it in a trailer bill or something, it would be in effect earlier.
Okay. So January, it might be earlier, but otherwise January, and that will, so our next board meeting, if we do virtually, will need to be like what we talked about yesterday, where we give the address of where we're going to be and everything, correct?
Correct. Everything will revert back to the regular, quote, old Bagley-Keene rules, where every teleconference location will have to have an address on the meeting agenda, and at that location, the meeting agenda would have to be posted and open to the public. That doesn't mean we have to stop doing WebEx. WebEx is obviously great for public participation, and we've seen our highest levels of public participation ever since we've begun this. And that's one of the positives coming out of COVID. And we can still use WebEx, but however, the agenda will still have to have those addresses. And so we might be dealing with that from July 1st to January 1st if it doesn't come into effect earlier, if it does indeed pass.
But it looks like it's going to pass. I mean, the way it's looking.
I can't possibly predict. Who knows? However, I do know that a lot of boards are taking support positions on it. The last update was at the end of May. So it looks, I always want to be positive about these things, but sometimes I get surprised.
Kyle, I just took a little bit of look at the history and some of the other things about this bill. It's been, and at the Senate, it was passed almost unanimously at every committee and on the floor. There is some opposition coming from like newspaper and First Amendment groups who don't like the idea of boards being remote. They want to see boards in person, but earlier, iterations of this that just kept extending the exceptions, I think pretty much were passed unanimously or close to it too. So,
okay, we shouldn't have a okay, awesome. And then Heather, on SB 813, the notice to register, that was in regards to sunset. What?
Yes.
And that was just it's sunset normally every 3 years, or that's just a renewal of a sunset? Is there anything different, I guess, with that?
No, actually, they can include other revisions to our BMP code through a sunset bill, but at this time it was just extending our board operations as well as your authority to appoint an executive officer.
Okay, and the sunset is every 5 years, and that's why it's 2028?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions or comments on these? Do I need to open it up? I don't have it in my script that I need to open up to public comment on that. Sabina?
This is Sabina. Absolutely. Did you want to discuss taking a position on any of the bills today before we open for public?
Yeah, I mean, do we think if it's needed to take a position on the SB 544, I would like to do that. I mean, I think we all agreed, and we discussed about it briefly yesterday, that we would like to see not have to do in-person meetings, or to be able to be a little bit more not inconvenienced on the location of where we are virtually doing our meetings from. So I would like to support the SB 544.
Okay, so that would be, this is Sabina again. That would be a motion to take a support position on that bill, the Bagley-Keene 544 SB bill.
Yes.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
That was John Tingen.
Perfect.
And
you can go out for public comment on the motion on the floor.
Perfect. David?
We are accepting public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial in users, dial *3, or you may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. And we have a request for comment from Dean Wiley. Hold on just a moment. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. Now, just a reminder, this is for the motion on 544. I see that you have a note for AB 1322. We may get to that pretty soon here. All right, Dean, it looks like you unmuted and then remuted. I'm going to send you another request to unmute your microphone.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, no, I wanted to comment on AB 1322, so I got jumpy on the gun there.
All right, we'll hear from you in a little bit. And that appears to be our only request at the moment. Would you like to proceed with the motion?
Yes, please. Sophia, can you take a roll call vote?
Sure. President Finley.
Yes.
Vice President Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Bindal.
Yes.
Board Member Paxson.
Yes.
Board Member Thrasher.
Yes.
And Board Member Tingen.
Yes.
6-0 vote.
So motion carried. So I would say now let's open it back up to the public so we can see if there's any comments on possibly AB 1322.
Yeah, I would say this would be public comments on the legislation report.
Okay, perfect.
We are now accepting public comment on all of item 15. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen to raise your hand. Dial in users, please dial *3. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. And Dean Wiley, you are next. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Dean Wiley, and I'm with the Pest Control Operators of California, and I'm currently on the Rodenticide Task Force. I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to discuss this issue with the board. This bill would drastically limit the tools that are available to the licensees of this board. PCOC is asking that the structural board submit a letter of opposition to AB 1322. This board has taken this same action for previous bills addressing this issue, so this action wouldn't be foreign to this board. We would like to ask you to take action today and direct board staff to craft this letter.
Can you just reiterate, go into it a little bit more so we can take the action? So I don't know if I'm asking you just to repeat yourself again or to go in a little bit more depth, I know for me, on what action you want us to take and why.
Well, first of all, this is a bill similar, very similar to Bloom's bill, which you all were in opposition to. It's including first generation anticoagulants, specifically difascinone. This bill would not only take the tools out of our toolbox of another active ingredient, but it would also implement a separate IPM program that the board has already established in 1984 in the Act, which would contradict and confuse possibly your licensees and which IPM procedure to go with. Not to mention also that Dr. Neve Quinn, you guys, the board has significantly funded her over the years in her research, and this would render it meaningless, everything that we've done by making a decision of emotion and not science.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other comments?
There are no other. Oh,
Right. I was just going to say, I don't know if this is a place that a board member can comment, but I'm active in PCOC, and we just had a meeting last week in Monterey. This is a big issue, and it specifically, obviously, affects Branch 2 technicians and operators, and I truly oppose it. That's my opinion and my input.
I will also just add that the positions the board is able to make, it's in your board meeting materials, the definitions of all of them. It's on page 83.
Okay, any other comments on AB 1322 or any of the other ones from public or board members? None? Okay, we can close public comment. So let's talk with Janet. Would you like to reiterate that and present it to the board and make a motion?
Sure. I will reiterate that and make a motion. I make a motion to oppose this bill, and guess that's all I have to say, right? I make a motion to oppose this bill and that the board sends a letter stating such.
Janet, I would just, this is Sabina, just include the bill number in your motion, just a motion to oppose.
I'm gonna reconfirm it, AB 1322, correct?
Perfect, and they send a letter by, that's how they send a letter, by taking a position. That will be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and I will second that.
Before we take a vote, I just wanted to comment and state that I feel like I don't know anything at all about this and don't feel like
I know
we've been educated enough on what the issues are to be able to take a position on it. So I get that those of you who are in the industry have some knowledge about it that those of us who are not in the industry don't have, and I feel like I'd want to hear from staff on this or something more than what we've heard.
Is it possible for Dean to explain more about?
I'd rather hear it from staff.
Got it. Okay.
So Sabina, can we then, without making a motion then, is this something that we can put on the future agenda item on the next board meeting? Is it something that's going to pass soon that we need to have a mail-in vote, a separate meeting for? How does that work?
So obviously your staff is here today and they can chime in and share with you everything they know about the bill. We have a motion on the table which will stay there. You can ask all of your staff and your EO to explain about the bill. I did a little bit of looking into it as well. But, because it does say there's some evaluation still needed by DPR until this action is taken. And so I'm not sure how that exactly all works either. But your staff can absolutely, explain this bill to you and how it might look in real life and in practice, and what the concerns are from both sides, what the, where it came from, what the bill is trying to do and why it's trying to do that. The issue with you can absolutely not take a position on any bill today. The board staff will continue to watch all of these bills regardless. If you don't have to take a neutral position. You don't have to take a motion on all of the bills. If something changes in the future, you can, if you'd rather wait for some more research on this, you can ask the staff to do the research, prepare the memos, and then, we can have another meeting, via teleconference if you'd like to take a position later. Obviously, we're in the middle of the session right now, so I don't know when we meet next, August or
September, I think.
So you're going to meet, technically the next full board meeting will be after the session ends. So you could always schedule a teleconference between now and, mid-August or something like that if you want to give staff time to research and develop enough materials for you to feel comfortable taking a position one way or the other.
Mark, where are you at with that? I mean, do we want to discuss it now more, or are you wanting to wait for your microphone's off, but are you wanting to?
I realize the time frame is difficult if we wanted to take a position on it before the end of the session. So if staff has some information that they can share with us now, that would be great. One of the things that I'm thinking is when we become members of a board within the Department of Consumer Affairs, what are we told about what our number one priority is? It's public safety. It's not about supporting the industry in all circumstances. So I would like to hear, again, if staff has more information about this bill, about the issue involving this chemical, at this point, I'd love to hear it. And also a motion has been made and it's been seconded. So if the board decides to take a vote, we can do that also.
I am not an expert on this. I'm not an expert on this, but when you say that, Mark, I just want to remind you that that's also the number one concern of, it's supposed to be, of pest control operators, is public safety.
I know.
So we're trying to control rodent activity, and we are having one of our tools taken away. There's a concern, that the rodent activity in restaurants and schools, et cetera, would not be able to be controlled as well as it can with this. So that would be, I don't know enough to tell you the details of it, but when we talk about Dr. Quinn, it's a possibility that maybe she could talk to our board or something like that to explain it in more detail.
And that's kind of gets to, my concern. I don't know where the public safety balance rests with this particular issue. And I was looking at the bill and the analysis, and I, as near as I can tell, and unfortunately that screen on my laptop has frozen, so I can't keep looking at it, but it looks like it's limited to using the chemical in wildlife areas and nature habitats, not necessarily anywhere and everywhere in the state. So, but I can't confirm that because I can't get back to that document.
One part of it is the wildlife habitat areas, and then the other part of the bill does include all of California until DPR has completed their reevaluation. It's my understanding there is also some stipulations within it that place the restrictions on DPR's reevaluation and their ability to approve it very low, and I'm not an expert, so I feel weird talking like this, but the samples that they would find in the field now are somewhere around 80 to 90%, maybe more. And they want to drop that to 10% or it's banned. So they're essentially taking DPR's ability to complete their reevaluation and limiting them severely.
And I believe that there are already laws in place that require DPR to conduct ongoing reevaluations of second generation anticoagulant rodenticides. This bill is adding another layer it's my understanding they already conduct reevaluations. They're just adding another layer of evaluation, making it more difficult for DPR. But again, I'm not an expert either. And if the board does want more information, I would feel more comfortable with going back, doing the research, and we can schedule something before session's out to talk about it again, or the board can choose to not take a position at all.
I thought I saw another board member who wanted to.
I do. I have a question on that, and I'll this question stems from the medical standpoint as a public member. I would actually just like kind of have an analogy from the use of a medication for a patient and then apply over here. So the first question comes is, I think from the bill from the information that was provided in this booklet, it said that the concern was the toxicity to the non-targeted wildlife. And that was a concern. There was a mention of 39 out of 40 mountain lions in the Los Angeles County testing positive for this, and which was concerning. So I would like to see more data that supports or shows some of these toxicity parameters for us to have a better understanding. What is it exactly doing to the non-targeted wildlife? That's one. Second is, are there alternatives present already? Because one of the concerns with Janet Rose was like, it's a public safety. We need to make sure that we need to control the rodents. So are there alternatives which are safer available in market, so we can still have the same consequences and work in the direction of public safety with using alternatives than this one? And the third is, what's the national statistics on that? So what are the other states doing with regards to this, and where is the restriction legislation supporting or not supporting this? So these are some of the parameters that come to my mind. So I would like to see those data points to even make second or reject the motion.
Is it worth opening the public and having an unbiased, as unbiased as possible, Dean speaking on some of those questions? Can we open it to the public and just hear some comments?
Sorry, this is Sabina. I was clearly not muted. You can always open for public anytime you would like to get additional input from the public. I'd caution you to state that it's an unbiased opinion, as is with the pest control operators of California, who have taken an opposition position already to this bill. So I don't think that's completely accurate, but you are always welcome to open up to more public comment.
Okay, if we could open it to the public, just because I think there were some good questions asked that I would love to hear those comments from the public on. And then we'll see how if we have to at this point, Sabina, take a vote, because we've made a motion, we've seconded it. We do have to take a vote regardless, correct?
I didn't hear if there was a second. Was there a second? I only heard the motion.
Yeah. I think that Kyle motioned, and I believe Janet seconded.
No, it was Janet's
Janet
motion.
motioned.
Oh, I'm
I think
sorry.
it's
And
the other way
Kyle,
around.
that's right.
Never heard a second.
Kyle was the second, yeah.
Sorry?
Kyle seconded it.
Got it. Yes. You can always withdraw your motion, Janet, or you guys can always go ahead with a vote and see where everything falls, because everybody is free to say no to a motion.
I guess I would.
I would like to.
Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
Well, just because those were really good questions and we have a member of the public here that I think can answer some of those, whether it's biased or unbiased, I would love to hear some comment on that, on those good questions from Ben Dahl and Paxson. So can we open it to the public and see if there's any comments on that? David?
This is the moderator. I am looking for direction from Sabina on whether you need to take your vote, withdraw the motion before you can hear from public, or the public comment can only be on the motion.
Sorry, that was unclear. I think the board would like to open up for a little bit more input from the public before they take their vote on the motion. So it would be great if they could open up and allow the public to add some additional information or possibly answer some questions before they continue with the motion.
Perfect. All right, with that said, we are accepting public comment. Our first request comes from Dean. For everyone else, please tap that hand button to raise a hand. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise a hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Like I said, we're going to hear from Dean first, then we have Jim Steed, and those are our two requests at the moment. You will be given 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning. All right, Dean, here we go.
I would be happy to answer any questions you have. I didn't write down the questions from the two board members. And I would really, I'd like to answer any questions you might have.
I know Ben Dahl had the question on reading through the report of, the 39 out of 40 mountain lions, I believe, in the Los Angeles wildlife area. How is that affecting the wildlife? And then was there other alternatives? What are those other alternatives to solve the issue? And what was the national, I don't know if you were asking national standards or national statistics on what that looked like.
I don't have those national statistics. That's I just know kind of what's going on here in California. I do know as far as and to speak on the mountain lions, I believe they did find rodenticide in their systems, but from what I understand, that wasn't what killed them. They were either hit by a car or they had mange or they had something else. And then in the autopsy of the testing of these animals, they found product in them as a trace amounts. Yes. The alternative, there are some, but these are the best tools that we have for the most part, and we use them in different areas of pest control. Some we use in certain situations where we need to go in and we have a massive rodent population and we need to knock down that population. Second generation anticoagulants are one of our best tools for that. And then difascinone is also used in gopher control, ground squirrel control, and you people up in the northern part of the state can appreciate the fact that these products, you would not be able to use them in that capacity anymore. And with all the levees and dikes and all the water runoff from the snow melt, that's important because they burrow into these hillsides, and they definitely can cause significant damage to those and keep them from holding water in place in certain areas. So I hope I answered some of those questions. I know Jim Steed, he's the next man up. He may be able to answer those questions better. I know Jim.
Okay, and I know whether it was you or with Jim, one of the questions was just like, how does this protect the consumer?
Well, it's public safety, right? And Janet said it best. Our job is public safety. Cockroaches cause allergens. They're able to. The allergens give small children asthma. Rodents in restaurants. All their fecal matter can cause numerous diseases. Not to mention the plague. I don't know if you all remember way back in the olden days when they had the plague. They can cause plague. They found plague in fleas that were from rodent infestations down in Los Angeles just a couple of years ago. So the public safety on this, the tools that we have, we're trained by the board. We go by the board standards. We know how to use and when to use these products, and we use them in situations where we want to protect that public safety, because that's our job, public safety.
Thank you so much, Dean.
I have a question for Dean. Dean, I do have a question. So one of the things, and I'm trying to actually just get some direction on. So what are the alternatives that are present? I still didn't get the answer to that. So are there alternatives? There was a mention of integrated pest management procedures before the use of second generation. So are there alternatives that are out there that could be used ahead of the second generation, excuse my language, what are they called? SGARs, second generation rodenticides, anticoagulant rodenticides. So are there available options, or are we saying that there are no alternatives present and this is the only option which is out there to control the rodents at a wide level?
No, they're all alternatives, absolutely. There's trapping. We can use, mechanical means to do such things, but these are also very limited in some of the areas you can use these in. And this isn't about, the products that we lost the second generation anticoagulants. This bill wants to now target the first generation, which doesn't not only harm, like I said, the rodent issues, but we're talking about gopher issues and ground squirrel issues. You also have, there's definitely different actives, but these are just tools that we have been taken away and we're forced into using other things when, we run into a situation where we need to use a tool like this for public safety, and we're limited by what we can use.
And are we aware of? I know we mentioned. I'm just commenting on what's available to me right now. But are we? What about the sublethal effects? There's a mention of sublethal effects on non-targeted wildlife, which is a cumulative effect, meaning this pesticide builds up in the system and have some sort of long-term health consequences on those species. So are we aware of that? Do we have some sort of specification on what exactly are those sublethal effects on the non-targeted wildlife that we are talking about? That was the main concern, I bet, behind implementing or behind supporting this bill.
Yes, I don't know the specifics to that. I do want to remind you guys that this board over the years we have given money to Dr. Neve Quinn through the university extension. She has done extensive research on just what you're talking about for over 4 or 5 years now. And I believe you might, and maybe the board can dig up some of those reports, because she's reported back to you since you've been funding her research.
Yep. And a lot of times, sorry, this is something which I want some more clarification on. So a lot of times, when I talk about the national benchmarks, I bring in the other arenas of practices. So we follow national guidelines. There are national guidelines in place, and there are standards of, standard of care procedures. There's evidence-based care procedures, and those are followed at each independent state, wide arenas to have a better idea. So that's why I'm saying, are there any national benchmarks or standard of cares in this arena? I know California is notorious for wildlife. I mean, a lot of tourism happens there. But are there any of those guidelines available at the national level that we can actually resort to or follow to just have a better understanding?
Well, I will tell you that there are through the National Pest Control National Pest Management Association. But I will tell you that as California goes, so does the rest of the nation. So we're the first dealing with this. They're starting to deal with a little bit of this in the other states. Right. But as far as benchmarks and as far as how the rest of the nation goes, we're the leader.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Kyle, do you mind if I just read a paragraph from the legislative analysis on this bill that kind of addresses some of...
yeah, go for it.
Okay. Alternatives to rodenticides. According to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Department of Pesticide Regulation, and the U.S. EPA, the most effective and safest ways to address rodent issues are through exclusion and sanitation. In addition, traps, electrocution devices, and fertility control drugs can also be employed to address rodent pests without the use of rodenticides. DPR notes that rodenticides do not eradicate rodents and may not reduce their numbers for long. If there is an area-wide population of rodents, rodents from the edges move into the available space vacated by the poisoned rodents. Inadvertently poisoning the natural predators of rodents can also be counterproductive. Opposition to the bill asserts that preventative measures are already taken as a first line of defense by pest control operators. Removing, and I won't say it as well as the experts say, difecinone from the toolbox of available treatments leaves alternatives that can be hard to acquire and incur higher labor costs, such as fumigation and trapping. This bill would maintain the same exemptions in statute for the SGAR ban for the proposed difecinone ban. So that's what it says about alternatives.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Dean, as well. I know we have somebody else waiting, Jim. If we could open up to him, get his mic on.
Hold on just a moment. Jim is coming up.
Taking up as much time discussing this issue as they have. And I think that the discussion we've had is pretty illustrative of how complex this is. And I think the important thing to kind of recognize in our discussion is that there are two sides to the use of rodenticides. There's the benefit and then the risks or the effects. And AB 1322 does a really good job in addressing some of the effects, but there's no data on public health. There are no considerations for what will happen if these tools are removed. And I'll give you one point of worry for us, and that is that the second and first generation rodenticides all have antidotes. So almost all of the remaining alternative rodenticides do not have an antidote. And that means that if you're going to be still using alternative rodenticides around the public, you're placing pets and people at higher risk for the use of a rodenticide that does not have an antidote. In general, I think it might be pretty easy for the board to take an opposition position on this just by recognizing the complexity of this. I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we had a giant building full of scientists and policyholders to evaluate this and then come out with guidance and use for us? And we do. We have a $100 million agency at DPR, and they have almost completed their reevaluation of second generation rodenticides. And just recently, they have announced that they are intending to put difecinone into the same process. So by taking an opposition to 1322, we're basically saying the agency that's designed to do these important things, to have these important conversations with all of the stakeholders involved, can do it through their process, which is based on science. And so that's why we feel like it's the best place for all of those things to happen, where we can measure the protections that the public get from our efforts with these important tools, as well as mitigating as much as possible the effects on unintended harm to wildlife. So I would just strongly recommend that you be able to take a position on this if you could today, because opposing this will allow DPR to continue working on the issue already. And unfortunately, the timing of this would make your comment much more important over the next coming weeks rather than in a month or two away.
Thank you very much, Jim. And who are you with? Sorry, Jim Steed, correct?
Yeah, Neighborly Pest Management and also Pest Control Operators of California.
Okay.
Does anybody, can anybody,
questions?
Yeah, can anybody tell me how long this chemical's been in use in California?
Yeah, I think that this has been, as memory serves, more than 40 years.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
This is the moderator. There are no other questions or comments from the public.
Okay. Thank you. So we can close that. It looked like Janet had.
Yeah, I just, again, whether you're for or against it, there's one comment that hasn't been made through all of this, is that when they find rodenticides in mountain lions, it's assumed that it came from a licensed pest control operator. And the truth is, there's a huge problem out there with homeowners buying products on the internet, buying things from Home Depot, distributing them around their property in an unprofessional or non-contained manner. It doesn't necessarily mean that the problems that we're having with wildlife all originated from a licensed pest control operator. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Janet. Any other questions? Mark, Bindal?
I do.
I guess
I do.
Janet, where you at with your motion?
Yeah, I do have a comment on this again. And this is again stemming from an ambiguity in understanding the research a little bit better. Because a lot of times what we're discussing right now is that there has been non-targeted, again, I keep repeating, non-targeted wildlife exposure and some sublethal or lethal effects. It's a very vague term because we don't really understand what exactly are the sublethal effects. What's the research? There's a mention of research demonstrates a strong correlation between severe mange, M-A-N-G-E, I don't know what that is, and the level of exposure to anticoagulant rodenticides. So I would like to see the research. What exactly have they found? I mean, a lot of times, when, the pest controllers, the operators, they will do a research. There's a strong level of inbuilt bias in the industry in any of that research. It's in the pharmaceutical industry, it's in any sort of research, there'll be a level of bias. So usually there's a regulatory board that looks at the research and determines if the research is as per standards and what exactly can be interpreted from the research. So, I mean, I don't have an understanding of like, if that organization is doing a research worth 100 million more, is there a governmental regulatory body that is looking at the research and comparing with their own independent, unbiased research to find what exactly are the stats? And this is how science progresses. So I would like to see what exactly are the stellar data points, that are causing whoever to take a stand against or for to push this bill of AB 1322. I would like to see that data set, and this which is completely lacking. From you and I talking based on what is presented to us, or based on Google searches or whatnot, we can say, okay, well, there could be a lot of different variables that could be found in those mountain lions or whatever it is that could be causing what happened to them. But I'm pretty sure there is some research backing that up that is finding the correlation, not causation, correlation between those levels and some sort of health complications in those non-targeted wildlife. And I like to see that research. So I think we have very limited data set and data points that's available, at least from what I'm seeing to me, to take a stand for or against it. So.
I think Jim Steed was explaining that if we did oppose it and let it go to DPR, that they're the regulatory branch that would do, I don't know if that's the right term, but they're the organization that would be responsible for the research. So DPR is not part of PCOC or part of Structural Pest Control Board. It's a separate entity.
So is DPR a governmental body, or is it?
Yes.
Yes.
Department of Pesticide Regulation.
Okay. So
I think what it comes down to is the bill bans the use of the pesticide while DPR conducts a reevaluation of it. So do we support banning it until that happens, or do we think that it should remain in use while DPR conducts the reevaluation? And I still feel like I don't have enough information to take a position on it, but that's just my perspective.
Is that not what we rely on DPR for? I mean, we don't need to be, like Jim said, I mean, we don't really need to be the scientists and the experts behind it. If we're not the ones voting whether it passes or not, I think we're taking a position on it. And I think we have to rely on the Department of Pesticide Regulation to oversee it and make the right decision on it. So, I mean, that's where I stand.
Right. I agree. But what I don't know is what are the issues and concerns from the other side? For instance, whether it's DPR, Fish and Wildlife, US EPA, we have a very small amount of information from the people, the agencies who are looking at this from the other side of the issue. But we haven't heard from them beyond that one or two sentences that's in the legislative analysis. So I don't know what I mean, I think, and Kurt kind of says the same thing. We don't know enough on the other side.
Okay.
But
so I get that. Like I said, my debate would be, so are we not, trusting that DPR is going to make the right decision? So I guess I would say, like, if this moves to a vote, then just, hey, I decline to vote because I don't know enough information on it. If Janet wants to continue the motion,
I think that's where we're at.
Yeah.
I was about to say we're starting to talk around in circles, saying the same things over and over again. So maybe it's just time to.
Okay. I mean, I still support my motion because I do believe that it's not the writer of the bill or PCOC or the Structural Pest Control Board that should make the final evaluation. Let us turn it over to DPR.
Yeah, and I will still second that. So I say we move to a vote on this. Is that correct, Sabina? Can we do that? Is that where we're at?
Absolutely. If we have a motion and a second, you can, so long as the person who made the motion would like to keep the motion on the floor, you can absolutely have your call for a vote. I have to remind you also that when you do oppose something, or you should probably also include in your direction to staff why you're opposing this bill, because they're going to have to put that into the letter. That's if the motion carries.
Okay, Janet, do you want to rephrase? I mean, the same motion, but that we're relying, we're leaving it in the hands of DPR? Is that what?
Sure, if that's what Sabina is suggesting or advising, that we oppose the bill, let DPR do their evaluation and make the final determination. That's my motion.
Okay, I will second that motion. Do we need to open it up to public again for comments like we typically do, or have we already done that?
Not necessarily. I think you've done it unless you feel the need to do it again.
No, I feel like we've done it already. So it is moved and seconded. Sophia, will you take a roll call vote? You are not on.
I'm sorry. President Finley.
Yes.
Vice President Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Bindall.
It's a no, because of the concerns of lethal or non-lethal consequences, which are still very ambiguous based on the data presented to me at this point.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Paxson.
It's a no for me also, again, because I simply don't think we have enough information to take a position.
Thank you. Board Member Thrasher.
Yes.
And Board Member Tingen.
Yes.
We have 4-2, motion passes.
Okay, motion carries. Anything else before we move on to agenda item 17? Or do we have, can I ask? Go ahead.
Sorry, Kyle. I was just going to ask, and maybe this is a question for Sabina. I think when Jim was speaking earlier, it raised a question about, because he talked about the timeliness of some of the bills, in particular the one that we were discussing. But is there any, as we review right now, because I know that there's some that I think are pretty, run the business kind of bills, but is there any in question that we should also discuss as a matter of like timeliness for taking a certain position? I don't know if you could sort of answer that in terms of where they are in the process that we should also consider.
Yeah, this is a good question. This is Sabina. I would assume, I don't have my notes in front of me from any previous meetings, but I would assume that the board would take positions on their own sunset bill if they haven't already. That would be a normal type of thing, or anything else that affected them directly. I'd have to look. I don't have my notes in front of me from anything previous, but everything else is moving through the process, like I want to say, quote, normal. The other one, the 544, the Bagley-Keene was the other big one for the department, was important. And what I can tell you from other boards taking positions on, that was one of the most important ones from their standpoints as well. Everything else seems pretty standard. But I can also say
I think that question.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can also tell you that your staff will be monitoring, and if something gets gutted and amended or something crazy happens, they will absolutely be contacting the president to set up a meeting in case there is something that you must take or should take a position on under a shorter time frame.
Thank you, Sabina. Heather, any more comments on that? I know you updated us with each one. Were there anything that was urgent that we should need to talk about? Are you muted?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh,
yeah.
None at this time. Sorry.
I
would
the only other bill I think the board can support is the sunset bill, because we have not done that.
Can you explain more on, are we not putting it out there? I mean, obviously we support it, I guess. Can you explain that more?
It's just submitting to the author a support letter that we support the operation and the extension of of the board and the authority to appoint the executive officer until January of 2028. I mean, I think it's already known that we support, but it doesn't hurt to send a letter in support.
Okay, yeah, and is that pretty normal, Sabina? I mean, from other boards to come up with that and support it? I mean, obviously we support it, so if we need a vote to say that we support.
Yeah, it's a nice gesture, I should say.
Okay, awesome. Well, I would like to make a motion to support SB 813.
I would second that.
Let's open it up to public comment.
We are open for public comment on 813. If you would like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of your screen and send that. Please tap the hand button at the bottom of your screen. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to take just a couple of seconds now to see if we have a request for comment on the motion. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. Sophia, can you take a roll call vote?
Yes. President Finley.
Yes.
Vice President Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Dr. Bindall.
Yes.
Board Member Paxson.
Yes.
Board Member Thrasher.
Yes.
And Board Member Tingen.
Yes.
6-0 vote. Motion carries.
Thank you so much. Anything else from the board on agenda item 15 before we move to 16 on rulemaking?
I think Yesenia made a good comment, like maybe there's nothing pressing or urgent right now, but is there something that we could do that might be coming up that we need to do more research on so we don't find ourselves in a position like we did today talking about this AB 1322? Just don't know if there's something on that list that we should be able to study or research or gather more information for a future meeting. That's my only comment.
Yeah, I will make sure to stay more in contact with Heather and Sophia in regards to that, you know, maybe a month or two before, 6 weeks out from our next board meeting. I will ask specifically on this agenda item if there's anything that we need to do a little bit more research on or get more information on before it gets brought up. So yes, thank you. I totally agree with you on that. Okay, so let's move to agenda item 16. I know Heather's going to report to us on that, and then we'll see if we can go back to 13 if they are here. So agenda item 16, rulemaking report, and I'll turn that over to Heather Jackson.
Thank you. The board is currently working on 3 regulatory efforts. The rulemaking update provided as attachment 1 under this item provides a detailed summary and progress tracker for 2 of the efforts, the certification and training regulation, as well as the pesticide application notice regulation. The certification and training regulation aims to address new federal standards related to certification of pesticide applicators, which are structural pest control field representatives and operators, those that handle restricted use pesticides. In attachment 2, you will find proposed language for the board consideration. I believe it's page 90. The EO has recommended the board approve the proposed text and direct us to submit it to the department and agency for review. If the board chooses to proceed with the requested action, the full language of the motion is available on page 1 of the memo for agenda item 16. I believe it's page 86. The pesticide application notice regulation is progressing through the production phase of the rulemaking process. Our regulatory counsel has reviewed the initial materials for the package and provided comment. I'm working with them to revise where necessary and move the package to agency for approval. We are on target to file with the Office of Administrative Law in the next month or so. For disciplinary guidelines, at the last board meeting, it was suggested the board consider updating or modernizing some of the language in our disciplinary guidelines document. The current document is provided as attachment 4 under this item. I believe it starts on page 112. We're requesting the board to consider assembling a work group to review the current disciplinary guidelines and for the work group to provide a recommendation to the board on potential revisions at a future meeting. And with that, I conclude my rulemaking report. Happy to answer any questions.
I just have a question, Heather. Like when you say page 86, page 90, sorry, excuse me, like, so what are we looking at? So I don't see any page numbers here.
Sorry, I'm referring to the electronic version.
The electronic version of it. Okay, gotcha. All right.
Yeah, but it is, the attachment numbers are the same in your hard copy version.
Oh, perfect. All right, thank you.
Heather, I have a question. Can you, I'm sorry to ask you to do this. Can you say 16A again? I'm not sure. You started talking about operators and field reps. Can you please read that again? I'm sorry.
That's okay. So our certification and training regulation, this is in response to the new federal EPA standards. And I was referring to their standards affect our field representatives and operators, even though they're called pesticide applicators in the federal regulation. The 2 license types for the Structural Pest Control Board that it affects is our field representatives and operators, those that handle restricted use pesticides. So we are working on this regulation to comply with the EPA standards, and they would be affecting those 2 license types.
But would that be what we refer to as branch 1 only fumigators? Because most branch 2 and branch 3 don't handle restricted material. So I'm just trying to understand how deep this would go. Didn't we talk about this, Sophia, in Monterey? Or not?
We did talk about this. These regulations are to align with the federal standards, to make sure that we address what those requirements are. It's already, like I said at the PCOC meeting, California already meets or exceeds the federal standards. What we're doing right now is having our Office of Professional Examination Resources look at all of the current examinations that are being given and making sure that going through every item in the federal standard to making sure we either meet it or exceed it. And for the areas that we possibly need to change, update the examination, whatnot, the recertification we're hoping to target with continuing education rather than re-examining the licensees.
Okay, I remember talking about this, yeah.
Yeah, I want to try to avoid that if possible. So I won't know until later this month that's the time frame that OPES has given me on getting their evaluation done. But once I have that, then I'll know what direction we need to go in to make sure that our licensees are recertified the way the federal standard puts it.
It would be crazy for our industry if suddenly all our employees had to retest, but
I mean, and if
wait to worry, right?
Right. Yeah. And the way if that happened, the way we would do it is we would do it in a 3-year phase. It would be at the time of renewal. And it wouldn't be, the way I look at it happening, if we go that route, is possibly having a smaller supplemental examination given rather than you're taking the initial exam all over again.
Thank you.
But if there's another way of doing it, that's what we're looking at. So
Very good. Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. You had a question?
I had a question. As well, according to the information, these regulation changes are to address changes in federal standards. Is that correct?
Correct.
As we all know, state law sometimes can be different than federal law. Sometimes state standards are more restrictive or include more, as we discovered on the WDO form.
Yes.
Someday I'll know what that actually is. But anyway, have these changes been reviewed to make sure that they comply with any deviation in the state standards?
Yes, they have been. So a lot of the standards, a lot of the federal standards are being addressed through policy. A lot of that don't necessarily need to be addressed through regulation. And like I said before, we're already, our standards and what they're requiring, we already do. For example, they required recertification every 5 years or less. Well, we do it every 3 years already. You know, our licensees need to renew every 3 years. Another item that they listed was you need to be 18 years old, 18 or over, and in order to take the examination. Well, that's something that we already require. We require our applicants to be 18 years of age or older. However, that might be something that we need to maybe further clarify in our regulations, even though it's already a practice. So I don't see many changes because of the federal standards with what we're already doing, but I'll know a lot more once we get the analysis back from Office of Professional Examination Services. They did do a preliminary review of it and were able to tell me that they felt that our standards exceeded the new federal requirements. But they wanted, they needed until sometime in July, closer to August, to get me their analysis back on that. But that was their just, real quick look at the federal standards.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question, more specific question about some specific changes, just so I understand. So if you look at the changes to section 1950.5, the hour value system, there are all sorts of categories of things people could get hours for: adult education courses, accredited college courses, technical seminars or meetings, operators courses, that have all been deleted in these proposed changes. What's that based on, and is there some way that that's addressed somewhere else, or?
So that particular change, and I apologize, I didn't say this. So that particular change was more of a clarifying. We didn't completely delete everything. We just restructured and made the language, I guess, more user-friendly, more readable. We decided to incorporate many of the things into, let's see, for example, professional or association seminars. We wanted to leave that a little bit more vague rather than be specific on where what's stricken is technical seminars or meetings. We thought that maybe fell into the same category. So we just went through, wanted to make it more clear. We put the hours required in a table format. So you'll see a lot that was deleted. It was in paragraph format before on how many hours were required for each different area, laws and regs, or IPM and whatnot for branch 2 or branch 3. So we felt that the table, and this was a request from industry to make this more clear, rather than having to read the paragraphs on how many hours are required in each particular area.
Okay. I guess if, what are the categories? Laws and regulations, the LNR, ANI, IPM, if those aren't defined somewhere, then how do people?
They are defined in.
Oh, in section 1953, okay.
Yes, yes.
Sophia, you're specifically asking the board to authorize the executive officer to take steps on the rulemaking, adopt the process of this 1950, 1950.5, 1951.
For certification.
1953 and 1970, what?
Yes, so if you see on the screen I'm sorry, that's not what's on the screen. I take that back. So I am asking for approval, a motion to approve the regulatory text and changes to sections 1950, 1950.5, 1951, 53, and 1970 as provided in the materials, and to direct staff to submit all approved text to the Director of DCA and Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. If no adverse comments are received, authorize the EO to take steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make technical non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the EO to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations at sections mentioned earlier.
So basically just authorize, I mean, you're still submitting it to
This is
DCA and everything, yes, in consumer affairs.
Yes, so there still may be, right, changes
so they're
made.
Still going through the reviews.
Mm-hmm.
This is Sabina. I want to remind you also that your regulation attorney is here, Alex, and I would defer to him for any of your, wow, I just muted myself in the middle of that. Any of your questions or concerns, as he is another great resource.
Thank you, Sabina. I didn't see Alex on.
Can we get Alex, can we open it up to Alex?
Sure.
Yeah, hi folks, this is Alex Millington. Is there a specific question that members of the board have about the process or the significance of this motion? Or would it be helpful for me to just sort of explain what the motion means as far as the regulatory review procedure?
Yeah, this is Sabina.
Yeah, I think it.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Sabina.
I was just saying there seems to be a little, I was trying to scroll through these. There doesn't seem to be a memo like outlining all of the changes and all of what they're being asked to do. Obviously there's a motion there, but I think they would like to hear a little bit more about what all the changes do and how everything is, double checked and cross checked and, going forward, and if it's cross-checked against all the other DPR stuff, or I'm saying those words wrong, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so again, this is Alex. Yes, we have been through the process quite extensively of consulting with board staff about the way in which these regulations interlock with what I understand DPR is doing. I'll defer to board staff about the consequence of the text, because there's a lot here that relates to different licensing categories. I can definitely explain what the significance of the motion is and where we are in the review process, because this motion does do quite a lot depending on what happens as the package makes its way further through the promulgation process.
Yeah, can you clarify on that? I mean, for me, it was more of, is this something that is pretty typical of the board saying, go ahead, EO, and yes, do this. You guys have done, right? Is that typical?
That's correct. Yes. So I will say it's in the discretion of the board to determine exactly how it makes the deferral. But this motion, as lengthy as it is very similar, if not basically identical, to other form motions that are made for other regulations for other boards and bureaus. So, and just maybe to give folks a little context here, what this motion does is it approves the text, and it also it creates the possibility of adopting the text without need for further motion. So from the perspective of the Administrative Procedure Act, what the Office of Administrative Law needs to see before it can conduct a final review of the text is that the board has adopted text. And typically boards will go through the process of, try not to use the same words here, of assenting to the text in two steps. Number one, the first time they agree to the text, they will approve it using the word approve, contingent on seeing it a second time, at which time the motion is to adopt. What this does is it allows for any public comments to be submitted in between the time that the board approves the text and the board adopts the text. The significance of this is that if you receive adverse comments, you would hear the item again at a subsequent board meeting, and you would consider the comments received, and your motion would be to take a position on the comments and also to adopt the text or not adopt the text. So what this motion is doing is it is setting out a chain of events that presumes no adverse comments are received, and there are no substantive changes that need to be made to the text. So reading through it, the first part is to approve the text and then direct staff to submit the text to the Director of DCA and also to our agency, Business Consumer Services and Housing. Those are two steps which are necessary to get the package to a position where it can be submitted to the Office of Administrative Law for initial publication. So where it goes from here is, if you were to make this motion, I would work with board staff to complete the initial regulatory packet and then push it along in our review queue where it would go to the Director of DCA and then it would go to our agency. And once both of those entities approve the package, it would be submitted to the Office of Administrative Law for initial publication. So it says here in the motion, if no adverse comments are received, then authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process. Translation, go ahead and submit it to the Office of Administrative Law and make any technical or non-substantive changes to the package and set the matter for hearing if requested. It is very common. I mean, in essentially every case, motions to initiate a rulemaking defer to the executive officer these abilities and set the matter for hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, then you are also authorizing the executive officer to take steps necessary to complete the rulemaking. Translation, finish the package and submit it to the to the Office of Administrative Law, but also adopt the proposed regulations. So from a 10,000 foot perspective, what this motion is doing is it is setting into motion a chain of events that would require no further input from this board. Through the process, all the way to the process of submitting it to the Office of Administrative Law for final review, contingent on a number of things happening. That nobody asks for a hearing and no adverse comments are received during the required 45-day comment period. So if those things were to occur, by operation of this motion, the board would be adopting the language that you're seeing today, and that language would be included with the final rulemaking package as submitted to the Office of Administrative Law.
Thank you. That was very thorough, and I understand it way more now. So thank you so much.
Can I ask just a quick clarifying question, Alex?
Sure.
And this is because in my day job, I'm an attorney for another state board, and I learned this in connection with a regs package that we did within the last, 9 months. Does the staff determine whether to act on comments, or does that, if there are comments, do those comments have to come back to the board and the response to those comments approved by the board? And I'll tell you why I'm asking. After 20 years of doing regulations in which staff always reviewed the comments and decided how to respond, I was told that that was inaccurate, that there's a provision in the APA that requires the board to review all rulemaking materials, including comments. And we had to include some special language in the delegation resolution to ensure that staff could review the comments and that they didn't have to go back to the board.
So would this also include comments in support?
No, I don't. I mean, if it's just a comment in support, then that's not anything that would be seeking to change the text of the regulations.
Yes. So I don't know if I can answer that question like as a matter of law, but the way that this motion is structured, if an adverse comment would be received, then this matter would be set on another calendar for this board to hear. So
okay. So we would have to act in connection with any adverse comments.
Under this motion, yes.
Okay. For future reference, okay, I would be fine with delegating that to staff, but I don't have the language handy to be able to add that to this resolution.
Okay, any other comments on this? John.
I've got a comment. I was looking at the hour system, and it looks like the rules and regulation, the amount of hours have changed. It used to be 8 for one branch, but now is it being reduced to 4? Is that how I'm reading it? For branch
Sophia,
2.
we can't hear you.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
It's
4 per branch.
Gotcha. And it used to be 8, correct?
Well, if you're a
single holder for branch 2, you'd have to have 8 hours in the past, but now it's being moved to 4.
For branch 2, what license type are you talking about?
A branch 2 or a branch 3?
For an applicator or a field rep and operator?
For a field rep and operator. I'm looking at page 92 on the digital version.
So for A and I?
L and R.
L and R. Branch 2 is 4. I don't believe that the hours changed. I think that We did remove a category that was general. Heather, correct me if I'm wrong.
The general and technical. And then the IPM includes.
No, John, I think it's the same. I mean, you see total hours are 16. Law and regulations 4. Law and regulation was always 4. I don't think law and regulation was 8 at any point.
You know,
I'm on the Structural Pest Control Board website right now. Rules and regs for applicators are 4. For field rep and operators, it's 8 currently, if we're talking rules and regs.
Correct. You know, in the IPM, used to be 2, and that was before, you know, when you only had one branch, whether it's branch 2 or branch 3, you know, it would be definitely 2 IPM, and then the balance would be set out. But now they're making it all, you know, 8 hours IPM, and they've reduced the laws and regs.
That may not be a bad idea.
You know, well, I think it's, you know, I feel it's important to have more rules and regs for renewing of the licenses instead of less. I noticed a trend, you know, there's less classes, but, you know, I think, you know, it's important to have the same or more, not less.
And if we make this motion, we won't be able to discuss this. Is that the case, Sabina or Alex?
So this is Alex. So if you were to make this motion, I think that's generally correct, that this motion is complete enough that if it did not receive adverse comments, that it would not by itself automatically come back before the board. I certainly think that the board could elect to discuss the matter further at another board meeting and make modifications to the text upon further discussion. You could also do that, but that would be a different motion.
Right, this is Sabina. So you can change your text with a motion, and you can change the hours. I think you'd still be able to do that today and move it forward if that's what the board wants to do. If the board wants staff to do a little bit more research or gathering of information about these hours and how you might be able to justify them in the documents for OAL, you can ask staff to do that and come back to another board meeting with some suggestions on hours and how you might support that in the documents for the Office of Administrative Law.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I would love to see it move to another board meeting, and in the meantime, have the board present on, you know, if there's any big changes like that. I mean, if they're taking law and reg from 8 hours to 4 hours, and why. I don't think we'd be able to discuss that right now and go through the whole thing right now, but are there any other, I mean, John, thank you for finding that, but are there any other things, Sophia, that are big changes that the board, that we should discuss before we turn it over and just say, go ahead and run this through the gauntlet, I guess?
Well, I don't, you know, honestly, I wasn't aware. I know that the total hours didn't change. The breakdown in each category, I think that the regulations, the current regulations specified IPM and technical hours, but maybe we're not as specific with rules and regs. And so because it was specific with IPM and A&I, we went ahead, put the hours there, and then the remaining hours was in L&R, laws and regs. But if the board wants me to look into the hour values, you know, the hours for required for each license type, and that's really the only significant change that I see, that I think that I can definitely work on that and come back to the board with more information.
I believe there was a committee that this board convened a few years ago to address the hour value system. And some of these changes are as a result of their recommendations. And I'm trying to find it on my computer right now. It is part of the underlying data of this regulation. And we can absolutely send that information to the board members.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a meeting that was in the last 3 years. I don't remember going over that. So it was something before, but I mean, it sounds like, and I would love the rest of the input from the board members, but it sounds like maybe before just saying, yes, go ahead and run it through the process. Could we at least get a little bit more insight on, hey, we're changing these hours to this. This is why we did that. And is that the only big change difference before we say go ahead and take it through? Is that any more input from board members?
I would like to see that done.
Okay. So what is do we then not make a motion, or would we still be making a motion to, I mean, would we just say, hey, we're not making a motion because we want to see a little bit more information and we'll make a motion at the next board meeting?
Right. This is Sabina. If that's what you would like, if you are more comfortable making a motion with the rest additional information, and perhaps we can coordinate after the meeting about what type of memo perhaps the staff could produce to outline all of these changes that might make it a little clearer and easier for everybody to go through at the next meeting. We can do that as well.
Sabina, I have a question. Can we, the eyesore, if we prepared that, had that ready for the next meeting, that would pretty much go through every change step by step and explain why the reduction or the inclusion?
Of course, that's helpful. I also have, while I was sitting here, I also did some research into how other boards handle such substantive regulation memos, and I've sent some to the president as samples. And so we might consider breaking it down, especially in these complicated regulations where there's multiple changes, especially when you have multiple license types. It can get pretty confusing. And I know ISORs are really wordy, the initial statement of reasons. And sometimes that's overwhelming for lawyers also. I know Mark can probably attest to that as well. So we might find a way to pull all of that out into a rather organized bullet pointed memo, perhaps.
Right. Okay.
Hey, folks. I did want to point out. Oh, sorry. I just was going to mention that there's some chatter in the chat from the public. So I don't know if we wanted to, before making a motion, or to open it up for public comment as well.
Well, we'll definitely do that when we end up with a motion or not. We will always go out for public comment. There usually isn't a Q&A open anyway right now, but I don't know, but we'll definitely get there once we figure out if you're doing a motion or not.
I mean, it sounds like we're not making, I mean, from what I'm getting at this point, we're not making a motion to move forward with that. We want a little bit more information before we make a motion to sit, instead of just saying, take this through, because otherwise if there's no adverse comments, then we wouldn't see it again and it would just be done. So like, just in the 15 minutes of talking about it, John, you were able to point out that something changed from 8 hours to 4 hours on laws and regs. And so I think us having a little bit more insight, again, this is something that I will make sure to do a better job of, like, before our next board meeting, going through this, Sophia, you and I, going through it and saying, hey, we're going to ask the board to make a motion on this. Let's make sure we've got anything, see if there's any comments or something before we bring it into the board meeting.
Right. Okay.
So let's open it up to, if we can, let's open it up to, was anybody wanting to make a motion?
I'm fine with directing staff to bring it back to the next meeting with additional information for us.
Perfect. And you don't really need a motion for that. We'll just go ahead and do that anyway. And like I said, I've provided some samples. We'll come back with a better outline of the changes, maybe easier to follow along because it can get very confusing, and go out for public comment now, and then you can move on to item B.
Hi, folks, I'm sorry if I could intervene. This is Alex Millington. I do just kind of want to advise folks about the effect of not making a motion today on the overall timeline, just so everybody is, fully informed. If no motion is made on this item today, looking at the board's website, the next meeting of this board would be in October. And so the regulation itself, the overall regulation, would likely not be in print for initial public comment until the end of November or early December. And that is if we are able to submit the materials for review up to the director and to our agency after the board meeting. Just want everyone to be aware that it would delay the overall timeline of the package from, by several months to not take action today. But as long as everybody's fine with that, then sure.
And this is Sabina. And we can also, if we have another meeting about legislation or anything like that, and this other memo is ready, we can throw that in there. And if we have a meeting in between the meetings, we can also, add that into that. So there is a chance that you might see it again before the October meeting if we have another meeting on legislation or similar.
And I will add that when I came on, this language had, there was already drafts of this language that was going through the process and being worked on. And I believe that there was a committee and the board prior to this board did look at the continuing education hour requirements and the breakdown for each category. And that was, and I apologize, I didn't, I found that out during this discussion, and that was talked about. But again, prior board members, they worked on, and when we come back, we can dig up some more information. Hopefully we can locate some historical data on why they decided to change the hours and for particular license types and particular categories.
All right, thank you so much, Sophia. Let's open it up to the public, see if there's any comments there.
We are now accepting public comment on the matter. If you would like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. Dial-in users, please dial *3. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. And our first request comes from Jim Steed. Hold on just a moment, Jim. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning again. I'm really glad to see this topic coming up because I was on the committee in 2014 that helped compile these suggested changes and had been anticipating their implementation for a long, long time. I think they might have gotten lost a little bit in the bureaucratic processes that are at work sometimes. But there were 7 members of that subcommittee, including myself, Darren Van Steenwyk, Sylvia Kenmure, Brendan Kitagawa, Nita Davidson, Dave Tamayo, Naresh Degal, Ronnie O'Flattery. And we worked for probably 3 or 4 months to take a look at how the CE hours were supporting the intended regulatory purpose of continuing education to improve new and innovative processes that could make sure that licensees were better serving or best serving the public. And there was a lot of discussion about the total number of hours, and should it be 60 hours? Should it be 10 hours? Should they be all IPM? And so we probably had, I would guess, 30 or 40 hours worth of meetings in this subcommittee. And we really went about 20 rounds and ultimately came upon the structure that was presented to the board. And I have a memory, although I don't have an agenda available to me, that we made a presentation and the board at that time voted to adopt these and was then going to seek to implement them. And so we've sort of been sitting back and waiting from that vote to adopt them to see when they would be implemented. And I think that's why they're in the package they're in now and why they're available to you now. And so I know that myself and other members of this committee or subcommittee would be happy at any time to dust off the memory banks and try to help you remember or understand why the recommendation was made at that time.
That's amazing, Jim. Thank you so much. I mean, I think that's exactly what the board is kind of asking for of, you know, when did this happen? How are we coming up with these hours? And if it was presented to us with, hey, here's all the research that was done. Yes, it was done back in 2014 and it was already presented to the board. It was, you know, and we've been waiting for this and now we just need final approval for the EO to send this through. I think would make a big difference than just, wait a minute, the EO sending something through, what is it? You know, have we got a chance to, you know, look at it and has it been presented to us? What are the changes in it? I think that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, that was huge, you letting us know that, Jim. So thank you.
Really appreciate it. It had been 30 years since the CE structure had been looked at when we looked at it in 2014, 2015. And so we really felt that the update recognized how IPM had become a bigger part of the way we were delivering our services to consumers and in California. So again, we can get into the weeds a little bit on specific questions on why the hours were suggested the way they were, but it was a very, very diverse group that sat in those rooms for quite some time. All of the stakeholders that were involved, industry, non-industry, and educators and environmental justice folks. So really confident that we put together a really well-vetted package back there in 2014.
And how many, I know I heard the name Dave Tamayo, how many other board, was that just 2 board members?
So the other board member at the time was Naresh Dugal. I don't know if any of you know or remember him. And of course, Susan Saylor was a part of those discussions with us also.
Okay, so former EO, along with 2 board members and some industry is who put that together.
Yeah, a couple from industry, 1 from education, 2 from education, excuse me, 2 or 3 folks from our environmental justice stakeholders. So we had quite a few in the group. And then there was lots of public comment about the package at the time. And I think we were able to come up with a pretty good plan that had a lot of consensus. I don't remember there being any opposition with the final product.
Okay, and so did you look, have you seen the packet, the proposal, and that is what you guys had come up with?
Unfortunately, I haven't. I saw when I heard all this come up as a part of these changes, I haven't had a chance to look at that, but I absolutely will be very soon.
Okay. Any other comments? Are there any other open public comments?
There are no other requests for public comment at the moment.
Okay, well, we can close that. Any other comments from staff or board members in regards to this? Just real quick, the only thing I would say is, and I don't know if it's a question for Alex or Sabina on, is there a process where something in the next 30 days we can get a report from the staff and take a vote on it, or that needs to be we need to wait till October to do that? I mean, I hate that we have to push this out 4 or 5 months, but
I will add, because you asked the question of Jim, the continuing education requirements did not change that language from what the committee had put forward.
That is what the committee put forward.
Yes, we have that information that is in the underlying data that's going to be submitted with the package to the department and to the Office of Administrative Law.
Okay. Does that change the board's stance on possibly wanting to make a motion, or after hearing from Jim, is it still we need more information and let the board present something before we bring this to a motion? No comment. Mark, John?
I'd like more information. You know, if anything, we need more hours for continuing education, not less.
And I'm still in the more information before we do anything with this category.
Okay. And Sabina or Alex, is that something that if we're not making a motion today, it's most likely going to be a motion that we have to wait till the next board meeting in October for?
That's correct. But like I said, we don't know what's going to happen between now and October, and there might be other things that might come up that we might hold a quick teleconference meeting to cover, and this could be added to that to take care of that. So we can play by ear in that regards. We can have the staff, put together a nice memo with all the changes, so it's really easy to follow, and justifications for each, so it's not too heavy. And it's easy to understand, and then it can just be ready, and we can pull it in if we have enough to put together a little teleconference meeting, and we can take care of it between now and October. If not, you can see it again in October. But most importantly, I think all the board members need to fully understand all the changes that they are approving, and not necessarily rely on I know I've been involved in some of these meetings too, pre-COVID, but it'd be nice to get everything in one place so that you all are clear on what's being changed and why.
Okay, perfect. Heather, anything else on agenda 16? Otherwise, I'm going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll jump to item 13 if they are available to speak on those reports.
The only other item that we had for this agenda item is the disciplinary guidelines review. The board can take no action, or they can decide to create a work group to address the disciplinary guidelines document and come forward at a future meeting with proposed revisions.
Yeah, I don't think, again, just like the last one, I don't think we're going to take action on it, but I think that we need to review and discuss it so we can take possible action at a future meeting.
This is
any? Go ahead, Sabina.
Sorry, Kyle. I think this might be one where you can also just ask staff to maybe come back with a memo outlining suggested changes also for the disciplinary guidelines, and possible even like sample language, to where you have a little bit of a jumping off point. And then as a reminder, also president can always appoint a subcommittee. It doesn't have to be even appointed during a meeting. So, you can talk to some of your board members and figure out if anybody's willing to, take a quick first look through the disciplinary guidelines and kind of work with a total of 2 board members. That way we don't have a Bagley-Keene issue. And so there's a lot of options available right now.
Okay. So what's your suggestion on that then? do we need to take a motion or a vote at all? Or is it just, hey, can the board present us a proposal on this?
Yeah, I think the board staff, as they normally do, are taking wonderful notes, and you don't have to take a motion on this. They can just prepare some materials for a future meeting.
For this particular item, we're in the beginning phases of making the changes to the disciplinary guidelines, and so we added this here just. It was the last meeting that the board had directed staff to go ahead and start the process of updating the disciplinary guidelines. It's at this meeting that we're wanting to know if you want to consider assembling a work group or a committee, a subcommittee to help board staff make these changes. And then at the next meeting, we could have a memo as well as language with outlining all of the changes.
Okay, so do we want to, board members, I'd love your input on that.
Yeah, I think that all sounds great to me. From what I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sophia, I think there was just some discussion last time in terms of some potential, not only just review, but maybe perhaps additions to some of the disciplinary guidelines. I think we talked about, it was periodic testing, things like that, from what I remember. So all that to say, just wanted to provide that recall. And that all sounds good to me in terms of creating that work group and following along that process.
Thank you.
Do we have a board member that would like to be part of a committee I mean, Sophia, where are you guys at with it? Heather or Sophia, where are you guys at with that? Does it look like a committee needs to be put together to go over it? Or is it something that the board staff is going to be putting together and can present to us? Are you looking for industry board members to be a part of this, or do you guys have it handled? I guess I'd want some direction on that.
Heather, go ahead, Heather.
I think we would love to have board member participation as part of this. I think we've bounced around a few ideas in the last meeting, but as we go through the entire document, having board member perspective on a subcommittee would be helpful to just kind of round out those guidelines.
I'm happy to help if needed.
I'd like to be a part of it.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. So, I mean, it sounds like you've got Mark and John that can both be on that subcommittee to go over disciplinary guidelines. Does that work? And then we can present it at the next board meeting?
That's great. That gives us an industry perspective as well as the public. It's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And item C, Heather?
Yes.
Did we go over that? Was that part where you went with B and C?
That was the disciplinary guidelines. So we would just need, I don't know if we need a motion for a subcommittee.
No, it looks like B is the disciplinary guidelines and C is the pesticide application notice update.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. The pesticide application notice is no action requested for this one. It's just informational.
You already voted on this language. It's going through the process.
Okay, perfect. Okay. And Sabina, the question was asked on, do we need to make a motion or anything as far as John and Mark being on a subcommittee? We don't.
No.
There's no motion or a vote on that. Okay, perfect.
Not needed at all. Sounds like we've hit everything in agenda item 16, A, B, and C, and staff as well as your committee has some direction.
Perfect. Okay,
Thank you.
Sabina, do we have on agenda item 13, we're going to take a 5-minute recess and come back at 11:30, so 6-minute break. Do we have who's going to, on agenda item 13, do we have them here with us now?
Yes, they are here and ready to present. We're ready for 13.
So let's take a 5-minute recess here. If that's okay with everybody, we'll go to agenda item 13 and then back to 17, if that's okay. So 11:30, we'll be back right on time.
Thank you.
Thank you.